Stop whatever you were gonna do, cause it's time for Nick and the crew to tell you all the lore that you never knew about your favorite media, my dude. Stuff you're too lazy to look up, Nick and the boys gonna hook you up. From Halo and Batman to religious stuff, Lorecast is starting, so shut the hell up.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lorecast. It's me, Original Nick. I am joined by the impeccable Devin and our guest, Pamtaro. This is a redo of a redo for the Lorecast religion, Judaism. Devin and I did one a while ago where it was just the two of us, and then we had Pam on for another one with someone who is Jewish. And then some technical glitches happened. And I was making excuses for like, oh, I don't want to edit this because I was doing a lot of stuff at the time. But now we're back. This is a redo or redux, as Devin put it in the chat.
This is how Hollywood does it, man. They take 4 swings at it. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of what's going on. And so that's cool. So this is a continuation of Lorecast Religion, the religion series. We're gonna spend some episodes talking about Judaism, and we've already done Christianity. So if y'all haven't checked that one out yet, you definitely should because it's really cool. We have Benny on it, and Benny's awesome. Yeah, but this really isn't my show. So
You're a valued co-host, so it's both of the show.
Hey, I'm used to running the show on my own. You know what I mean? But that's cool. I did want to just start out by just introducing our friend, the great Pamtaro, who is a wonderful Twitch streamer. Pam
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah, no, you're great. You're the greatest of all time. The only person that maybe rivals you even a little bit is our good friend Zachary. But so Pam, can you tell us a little bit about your history and all that good stuff?
So, my mother is Jewish and my father is Southern Baptist. So I was actually raised in a dual faith household. But when it came time to choose a religion, I went towards Judaism, and there were several reasons for that. But we don't have to get into that. But yeah, I have family in Israel, and I have family in London, everywhere, basically. A lot of really good people. And so growing up, we did Passover, we did Christmas. We didn't really do Hanukkah because my mother didn't really do it growing up. But, I have actually started doing it with my children now. So I try to incorporate as much as I can into our home without being, obtrusive, because my children are my stepchildren. So they're always given the choice to participate, but I never actually force them to because I don't like that. It's not right in my opinion. So yeah, that's just kind of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
That's very progressive of you. And awesome. And I support it wholeheartedly. I support kids getting the choice because it's a really crazy thing these days. Like a lot of the indoctrination that happens when kids are young. So that's what my parents did too, is that they were Christian, but they were kind of go out and explore. They regret it today though, because I'm super into the occult, and I'm super into I can sit there and tell you for 2 hours about what the difference is between LaVeyan and theistic Satanism, and they're just they regret it, but I'm sure you won't. I'm sure your kids will be great.
That was something interesting that you brought up. Is we talked about it last time we did it, but from what I could tell, within Judaism, they don't really proselytize or spread the word, as far as I can tell, because they're in order to convert to Judaism, I think we discussed that it's really difficult to actually convert.
Yeah, there's a whole process.
There is a process, but it depends on how you want to do it. If you want to do it, quote unquote, the right way, if you really want to go to an Orthodox synagogue, that's one thing. But, there are actually a lot of Reformed temples out there that will just, you work with a rabbi, you take classes, you might learn some Hebrew. But honestly, most of it is just making sure your heart's in the right place, making sure this is something that you really want to do for yourself and, in the eyes of God, whatever it is. But that's the thing. It's like whatever it means to you might be something completely different from someone else. So it's an interesting thing.
I actually wanted to ask, so what are some differences, as somebody who was raised both on the Judaic side of things, is that the correct terminology? Judaic? Is that right? Is that a word? If it's not, I'm sorry. I believe so. Yes. Okay. I'm smart. So as somebody who's raised on the Judaic side of things, as well as the Christian side of things, what are some, for our listeners, what are some kind of differences that you would highlight between these two related but obviously very different belief systems?
So can you be more specific? Like, which belief systems specifically are you looking at here?
So Judaism and Christianity, some differences between those two.
Well, let's just say that I went to a Baptist church for 3.5 years with my father, not of my own accord. Let's just say that. And I definitely noticed a lot of differences. There is, people say that the Christians do, believe in the Old Testament as well. And, you hear a little bit about Moses, Jonah, and Noah, but honestly, there's not much more than that. It's a lot of Jesus, which is totally fine, but it's just not there for us. There's a lot of difference also, if you look at the scripture, between what kind of God, we have, because if you look at Torah, we have kind of a wrathful God. This God doesn't take any shit. Whereas, in Christianity, it's very like loving, and there's the concept of forgiveness. And while there is forgiveness in the Old Testament, there is definitely a lot of consequence as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's because, obviously, because the Torah, the Torah in the Old Testament are basically the same idea. They just have, I think there's a different order. I think it is, like, some of the books are placed a little bit differently, but
I'm not sure. That sounds right. I think I've heard that before, but I'm not sure. Okay,
but I mean, the thing that kind of separates. So for those of y'all who don't know, Christianity, what it was it actually started out as an extreme offshoot of Judaism. So what it was the Jewish religion didn't allow what they refer to as Gentiles. They didn't refer non-Jewish people. They did not let them into the religion. These days is a little bit different. You can, as we were mentioning earlier, you can go through and convert and do the whole process. But back then that wasn't the way. And so what ended up happening was Christ came along, and Christ said, hey, like, Gentiles should be allowed into, and please correct me if I get any of this wrong, guys, please. But Christ came along and said, hey, we should let Gentiles in. Okay. Like, they should be able to be holy and saved as well. And that caused a lot of problems with the mainstream Jewish establishment at the time. Just because it was an extreme ideology, and we see that with even going into the modern day when people kind of branch off from what's kind of set in stone. I mean, look at what's happening with the Catholics right now with the current Pope, who's kind of gone against some of the old teaching. So it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It just is something that happened. So Christ came in and he said that, and there was it wasn't exactly something that took 1 second. Like, people weren't like, oh, Jesus said this, so it's a thing. So the original Christians were considered, it was just considered Judaism as an offshoot. But I think it had to do with Paul, wasn't it? I think Paul was kind of the last step.
Paul
like
was
he was it Paul or Peter? They had to convert to Christianity.
Paul was the one who he was Saul at first, but then he was on the road to Damascus and was blinded by the light of God. And he was a Pharisee, I believe, if I remember right. I haven't read New Testament in a while. He was a Pharisee, which was like a high-ranking Jewish person. I think that's where I forget a lot of my teachings was. He was a Pharisee and he persecuted Christians. He was out there. He was a Christian killer, saying, Christ can't be God, because that was the problem. That was the main problem, I think, was when Jesus came. He said, "I am God," and the Jews didn't like that.
Well, yeah.
Because there's only one God.
Led to him getting like convicted for blasphemy, right? Like for being a heretic. So, but please continue.
No, and then he was on the road to Damascus, and he was blinded by the light of God, and he was like bedridden and still blind, and he was tasked by Jesus to convert the Jews. So his mission was to focus on the Jews, and Peter was the cornerstone of the church, and his was mostly Gentiles. So they're like the two biggie boys, Peter and Paul. From what I hear, someone that I know said that they had a friend who was Jewish, and they didn't like Paul too much, from what I can tell.
Well, any historical issues aside from anything that was just said, because I'm just not 100% on it. Anything aside from that is that eventually what ended up happening was Christianity basically had to split off and be its own thing. That's why Christianity is Christ, is the Christ religion, following Christ as kind of the Lord and Savior. He died for your sins, all that good stuff, which is an opinion that Judaic tradition doesn't follow. I believe he's considered a respected figure, or maybe
Yeah, it depends on who you talk to, honestly. I know people personally who say that they don't believe he ever existed. I know people who say he was a prophet, he was a man of God. I know people who say that he was just a guy. And these are some Jewish people that I know. Some are Reformed, some are conservative, some are Orthodox. And like personally, I think he was a prophet. He was just like a good person who did God's work, And like you said, it was an offshoot of Judaism. There's a lot of research out there that says that he never really wanted to split away from us, but politically, like he kind of had to, at some point.
Well, because Jesus was Jewish, he was
right.
Yeah, so
he was probably like 5'2" with a big nose, like.
So coming from the Christian background, from what I was taught, the Jews wanted an earthly ruler because in the Old Testament, God promised. He had a lot of promises. It was a king and a kingdom, and they didn't get an earthly king like they were promised. So they didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah because Jesus came to set up a heavenly kingdom. When after you pass away, you have that kingdom, and they didn't have the land at the time.
Are you talking about the covenant with Abraham?
Yes, the covenants. Yeah, he made a lot of promises, and at the time Jesus came, it was mostly far off in the future and not earthly based. So that was, I think, part of the big problem was they were like, hey, this guy Jesus claims to be God and our Messiah, but we're still enslaved and we are still oppressed.
That makes sense. That makes absolute sense.
So that's why from the Christian point of view, that's why the Jews didn't accept Jesus as Messiah, is because the earthly king that they were promised was not at the time. If you read in the book of Revelation, it eventually comes to pass, but it's not anytime soon, from what I can tell.
I mean, historically, it still hasn't really. I mean, we're talking about highly disputed lands. You know what I mean? Even to this day. So.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, that's kind of where a lot of the split off is. But really, if y'all want to crash course in kind of like the Judaic like beliefs and like where they kind of come from, it's what Pam referenced earlier, which is like God in the Old Testament was incredibly vicious. Like God wanted sacrifices, and this is not a, come down on God and like all that kind of stuff, like hate fest or anything. It's just it is worth going into the differences, which
Absolutely.
he wanted sacrifices, and he was like one thinks of Isaac and Isaac. Yeah, it was Abraham and Isaac, right? Like the binding of Isaac.
Of Isaac.
Yeah.
Yep.
The story you're going to talk about.
And then there was that, and then there was it was just all sorts of stuff, a lot of stuff that was said in the Old Testament, and then so of course Christ came along, and then there's the whole forgiveness, and then God has seemingly chilled out a little,
It's like when you have like
Isn't that what happens when people become parents, though? Is they chill out a little bit?
Exactly what I was about to say. It's like the first child, and then the second child, you're like, whatever.
When it comes to Christ, it's believed and expressed throughout Christianity that when he died on the cross, he was the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. So back in the Old Testament, you had to have a sacrificial lamb, and had to be pure, no spots or anything. That's what Cain and Abel had a problem with, because Cain wanted to give fruits as a sacrifice, and God said, no, it has to be blood. And then when it came to Jesus, he was the ultimate sacrifice. So you didn't have to, you no longer had to make physical sacrifices when Jesus came along. So in Christianity, he is the ultimate sacrifice.
I actually did not know that.
Before.
That's
I have heard that before. It's interesting.
It's that is crazy information that I had never heard before. That is awesome. So something interesting. Pam, when we originally talked to you about doing this episode tonight, you had mentioned that right now is Passover, and you have something called Seder.
Seder.
Can you please tell us about that?
Okay, how familiar are you guys with Moses?
He oh my God, if I get this wrong, please don't think I'm stupid. He talked to God, he talked to the burning bush, he brought down the tablets, Charlton Heston, part the Red Sea, let my people go.
Let my people go.
Yeah.
That was
Yes. So Moses is my homeboy. Everyone loves Moses. Moses is wonderful. Like, just the story is wonderful. So you guys know that according to Torah and everything, we were enslaved in Egypt for many, many years. And so at one point, we have Moses, who was raised by Pharaoh himself, and Pharaoh raises him as his son. Have you guys watched Prince of Egypt?
Yes.
Okay.
I was about to say, that's probably my favorite depiction.
First of all, it is the most wonderful thing. If you meet a Jewish person who does not like the Prince of Egypt, ask them if they're okay. Because most of us are like, yes. I'm actually a part of a Discord group called Jews of Discord, and we are doing a watch party. So
nice.
All adults, all probably going to be drinking wine, but we are definitely doing a watch party.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just a wonderful story. At one point, Pharaoh gets a prophecy that says an Israelite will kill him one day. So what he does is he goes and he makes this decree: you must kill all the firstborn sons. So in one night, they slaughter all the firstborn sons of the Israelite slaves. And so there's one that survives, and she puts him in the river, and she asks God to take care of him. And so he goes down the river, and he ends up at the palace. Well, the queen says, "You're now my baby." And so they raise this child as their own. It's Moses. And at one point, I believe the actual story goes that, hang on, I always forget what actually happened. I think he accidentally killed a guard who was, whipping one of the slaves. And so it was actually punishable by death because he actually did kill someone. And so he ran. And so he wanders the desert, and he gets taken in by people in tents who are also, Jewish. And that's where he becomes a shepherd. And so he becomes a shepherd. And then there's the business with the burning bush where he speaks to God. And God says, you have to go back. You have to go back and get your people. They're my people. They're your people. You were born to do this. And so he goes back and he says, you need to let my people go. Pharaoh says, you and what army? And so God starts sending down the plagues. Locusts. He kills all the cows. He makes the river of the Nile just turn into blood. All these different things. And still Pharaoh says no. Pharaoh says no. Well, on the last night, he says, okay, just like your father. By the way, this is Ramses, I think the second at this point. And my history is not very great. So if I get things wrong, I'm so sorry. I promise I'm not a bad Jew. There's no such thing as a bad Jew. But at one point he says, listen, if you don't let my people go, I'm going to do what your father tried to do to us. And every single firstborn will be killed by the Holy Spirit, by God. And so Pharaoh's like, like to see you try. So that night he goes to everyone who is a slave and he says, listen, tonight as you go in your homes, I need you to take the blood of a lamb and paint it over the archway of your door. That's how God's Spirit will know not to go to your home. So everyone listens to Moses. They do the thing and they go in their homes and they pray. And that night the Spirit of God comes down and they pass over the homes of the slaves. And they go into the homes of the Egyptians and they kill the firstborn son. And then the next morning, devastated because his own son is dead, Pharaoh says, fine, go. And the story goes that our people were in such a hurry that they did not even have time to bake bread, which is why we have matzah, which is a god-awful cracker that I have been eating for a day and a half now. So they leave and they're, going down. And everyone's leaving. They're celebrating. They're liberated at last. And then all of a sudden, Pharaoh changes his mind. And that's when Moses parts the Red Sea. And they start walking down. And as soon as all the people are done, everyone has crossed, the sea goes back. Some of the Egyptians are in. The Egyptian soldiers are trying to follow the Israelites. They get caught and they are killed. The wrath of God comes down, and so they begin to wander the desert. And then that's a whole other story. We wandered the desert for 40 years trying to find the promised land. And then there's a bunch of stuff that happens along the way, which, the 10 Commandments get started and everything. But Passover is mostly just a story of our liberation from Egypt. So,
good times. And so how do y'all celebrate it? Please excuse my forgiveness. Excuse my ignorance on the subject. But how do you? First of all, that is a wonderful story. I saw the Prince of Egypt when I was a kid,
so
and it's definitely really cool.
yes.
The scene, especially when the water is parted.
Yes.
And like
Yes.
it's beautiful. Wasn't there like wells and stuff and stuff? Like it wasn't like.
They had lightning flash and you see the shadow of a whale and everything. It's
It was
beautiful.
cool.
Like,
It was cool.
"What?"
It was cool. They did it really, really well.
Yes,
Who
they
released that
absolutely
anyway? Was that
It is DreamWorks.
It's DreamWorks? Okay, cool. Yeah, I was
They
like,
also
that's
did
not
Jonah.
Disney.
It was
think Jonah
it was a
Hodgson.
rival
It was
little animation. It was like an animation.
Was it
was
Joseph who had the coat of many colors? They also did that one.
that was their second one, and that one didn't make it to theaters. That was a straight to VHS.
Yeah.
Uh,
I still saw it.
The
I like. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I knew it wasn't Disney because obviously the problems with Walt Disney.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that movie's
That's
a
the
class
reason
act.
they made it. Yeah.
But the question I want to ask though is that's thank you for catching us up on kind of what Passover is and where it comes from. How do y'all celebrate that today? Like you said earlier, like I said, that it's Passover right now, and you're not the first person who said it to me. Actually, some of the people I've talked to for work have also explained that it's Passover. So just so all of us can be more more on the pulse of things for next Passover. How do y'all celebrate it? What does it imply? What is it, kind of what's the kind of the reasoning behind it? And is there a certain kind of food, or do you not eat, or?
It's amazing. So it's wonderful and it's awful at the same time. So it's 7 days long, and you do not eat anything with leaven in it. Okay. So nothing with yeast, anything that lets bread rise. So before Passover, what you do, or as we call it Pesach, what you do is you have to clean it out of your house. You have to take out all of I think it's chametz. My Hebrew is really, really bad, so I always forget what the actual word is. But you take it all out of your house, and you have matzah. Matzah is this cracker, and there is matzah that is not kosher for Passover, so you have to always make sure you get the right one. And basically, you eat foods that are symbolic. You have a Seder plate. It actually is a special plate that has a spot for everything, and everything has symbolism. So, for example, there's something called Haroset. And Haroset is supposed to be like the mortar of the bricks that of the pyramids and monuments that we helped build, the things that held it together. There's an egg. You eat a boiled egg, and it's supposed to symbolize spring. You eat horseradish, bitter herbs. I think the bitter herbs, or the bitter herbs for. Anyways, I don't remember that one, but there's also like parsley dipped in salt water to symbolize the bitterness, the tears of our people. There's a bone, like a lamb shank, or like last year, since it was, quarantine and everybody didn't know what was going on, I had like chicken bones. So I used a chicken bone for it. And of course you have the matzah, and I'm trying to remember what else. There's matzo ball soup, which is amazing. You guys have probably heard of it before. And it's actually a lot of fun to eat. And this is where the Ashkenazi versus Sephardi traditions differ, because the Sephardi Jewish people have been eating rice for a long, long time. And because, it's not that it rises. Rice doesn't rise when you make it. It just kind of, I don't know, soaks up the water.
Yeah, it kind of fluffs up a little bit.
Yeah. But for some reason, the Ashkenazi Jewish people did not ever allow rice. But a few years ago, all of a sudden they were like, hey, rice is kosher. And everyone was like, thank God, because the Sephardis have been doing it for a long time, But there are definitely blessings said the entire meal. You have to slouch, you have to lean back, basically to symbolize that, you're free. You don't have to work. You can literally slouch during this meal. There are 4 cups of wine that you drink during it. There's the 4 questions. And so the 4 questions is something that children do. And they ask you things like, why is this night different from all other nights? And it's like, other nights we eat all different kinds of bread. Why tonight do we eat unleavened bread? So basically you're teaching your children as you go through, this is the story. This is what we do. This is why, we are doing this. You also leave the door open for I think, don't we do that? We leave the door open for Elijah, what's it called? The prophet. So there's all different kinds of stuff. It is a really, really wonderful tradition. I encourage anyone to, if you have a friend who is Jewish, ask if you can join Seder or do Seder. Most of us are very excited that anybody just wants to. There's also something called a Haggadah, and basically what that is it's like a roadmap. They tell you exactly what to do. They tell you, at this point in time, you drink the 3rd glass of wine. And, some people do part of it, some people do all of it, some people pick and choose. And that's kind of the fun part of Judaism, is that you can do that kind of thing. There's no set in stone, this is exactly what you have to do. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think of all the things because it can be pretty involved. There's the Afi Koman, which is another thing for the children. You place 1 piece of matzah in a napkin and you hide it, and the kid that finds it gets $5. or something like that. Like there's a prize when you bring it back to the adults.
Whew, I'm playing just so I can get paid.
Right?
I'm trying to make this money, y'all.
Make that paper. Yeah, it's honestly it's a lot of fun, and it's, you know, getting together, and it's just like, hey, guess what? Our people aren't enslaved anymore. You know, it's celebration of rising up and finding liberation.
Judaism definitely had a wonderful glow up. All right, I definitely got to give credit where it's due. Nick might actually, because he was raised differently than I was, of course, and that's of course great. He might disagree with me on this, but one thing that like really struck me, Pam, when you were telling me about that, is like the amazingness of having like this rock solid. Like you can modify it as needed for like your kind of modern life, but it's like a rock solid tradition where it's like, this is where we came from. This is our history, our shared lineage. Right. Even if like maybe it's somebody who converted, it's still at least an ideological lineage, you know? And so like, cause I was thinking about it, and you just went into like such amazing detail about this ceremony, about kind of like about like this Passover and like and cedar and everything, and like it's just like such wonderful detail. And so I was thinking, okay, when I was growing up, can I describe, because I was raised Christian, kind of Christian. I was raised kind of like hedging my bets Christian, like I mean just being real here, and I was trying to think, like, is there any tradition that I can think of that is that involved or that joyful about kind of something? And so I started going down the list, and I was like, okay, Easter. Woke up, got a thing full of candy, went and got eggs. Something was mentioned about Christ being nailed to the cross or something. Okay. Well, Christmas, woke up, presents, ate food. Jesus was born today? Okay, whatever. Okay, moving on. Halloween has nothing to do with any of this. All right, and like I honestly was like trying to go through it, and like I can't, like, as my like kind of modern American existence, I can't think of one tradition growing up that had that kind of appreciation and love for, you know, this kind of shared history. And
did you guys not do Palm Sunday? Isn't that a big thing?
Well, that's the thing. It depends on which denomination, because I was raised Southern Baptist as well, and they didn't really do a lot of the traditional stuff. When you get into the other denominations like Church of God, they love the day of Pentecost. They are Pentecostal, which means they really focus on the works of the Holy Spirit. Then you have Catholicism, and after being with my lovely partner, who is Catholic, she is she's a lovely lady. I love her. She took me to church with her, and the Catholics, they have the traditions they're more in line with, this is why we do this. This is what you need to do, or for this certain day. They have like in the pamphlet, I guess you'd say, like the bulletin for, I don't know how to say it, like the Catholic version of that, where they say, hey, this upcoming day is this. For right now, it is Lent for Catholics. I believe the Eastern Orthodox Christians, theirs is a little bit later on. But right now is Lent, and every Friday before Easter, you can't eat meat of a ground walking. Yeah, so you only eat fish or no meat at all. Ash Wednesday, you fast all day. You only eat one meal, then you fast the rest of the day. Easter Sunday, I believe you do the same thing, and Good Friday as well. So they have traditions when it comes to Catholicism, but being raised Southern Baptist, you don't really do that. You get kind of happy. Southern Baptists are really focused on heaven, from what I can tell. Yes. If you listen to their music, it's all heaven bound. It's all what Jesus does for me, not what I do for Jesus. Church of God, like I was saying, Pentecostal, they really focus on works of the Holy Spirit and what the Holy Spirit does through you to others, that you can do for others. I love Church of God. Church of Christ, they're more liturgical, as in like they read the one passage, you know, no stringed instruments in the church. Little they know a psalm is actually like a stringed instrument. The goobs, I love them. But I think that's from studying Christianity and then studying Judaism. I found a lot of people forget this, but here's the main difference coming from a Christian. The main difference between Christianity and Judaism is people forget that the Jews are God's chosen people. They'll never stop being that. A lot of people say, a lot of my Christian friends even say, well, didn't we replace the Jews? I'm like, no, we got married into the family. We are like the stepchildren. We are allowed into the family. We are allowed to receive similar blessings, but we will never be God's chosen people. That's always going to be reserved for the Jews.
That is so true.
That's an interesting way to say that.
Yeah, going from Christian school, everyone's like, well, we got what they didn't get. And it's like, well, they get it eventually. If you read later on, for when the Messiah comes, they still get it. Even in Christianity, they still believe that Jesus is their Messiah, just they don't realize it until later on. So,
but
go ahead.
Don't forget about the Catholic whitewashing of religion.
Yes, I was going to say, after finding out that there was actually Adam had a first wife according to Jewish tradition.
Yes,
Lilith.
And she was rebellious. She was rebellious.
She became a demon,
so
dude.
God said Eve.
Lilith became a straight up demon. Like she didn't obey. And Pam, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but she didn't follow Adam's directions or whatever.
No.
And so for the crime of being a strong, independent woman who don't need no man, the original Queen Bee. She got turned into a freaking demon. That I do have issue with that. That one thing that does annoy me a little. Pam, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, so Lilith is one of those. Okay, so all right. So Lilith is one of those things that. So she is definitely mentioned in Hebrew text. She is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which, by the way, I have seen myself. They are really cool.
That's neat.
So she is definitely like a demon of the night. Like it's how do I put this? So yes, you are right. She did not want to say anything. She didn't want to. How do I say this? Like I'm kind of tripping over my words here. Lilith is just one of those things. Like she did not want to do what Adam said.
I think the phrasing was she didn't bow to Adam. Well, I think was the phrasing that I heard. Like she refused to bow.
Right, and like she wasn't made from his rib. She was made created at the same time. Like just anyways. So because she refused to say okay, well, no, she went off to be with the beasts, to be with the desert beasts that were outside of the garden. And in Judaism, a lot of times you hear okay, so my family wasn't like this, but I have heard people tell me that when you're a little child, oh, you have to go to bed or else Lilith will get you, kind of thing. But I don't think it's very much anymore. I don't think people really do that anymore, but I have definitely heard people say that in the past. And I don't know, it's just I just love her.
I think
yes,
Lilith is amazing.
But
I will say also that for those curious, Lilith, I believe, is also mentioned in the book that I never get the name right in the first time, but it's the biblical stuff that is non-canonical. Nick, help me. What's it called? The Apocrypha.
I forget too.
Apocrypha.
The Apocryphy.
Apocrypha. It's with the A. Anyway, that book.
I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah. You the man. Okay, so I believe Lilith is also mentioned in that book, and it only makes sense, right? Considering that half of Christian texts are ripped straight out of Judaism, so it would make sense that Lilith is in there as well.
Yes, it's the Apocrypha. You had it right.
Good. Okay, cool. So that's also a part of, but it's non-canonical as far as Christianity goes. So, but Lilith is wonderful. But
except for Catholicism, they include it in the, because when I went to Catholic church, I was like, the book of who? And they were like, yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
It's a
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, I was like the book of Judith. Who's Judith? I don't know this book of the Bible. And they were like, yeah, the Protestants ripped out 14 books of the Bible.
Yeah. No, it was. I think a lot of that stuff. I think a lot of people don't really think about is like, especially what King James did to the Bible. King James, what King James did was a crime against history, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Him and the what is it, Nicene, the Council at Nicene, or was it anyway?
The Council of Nicaea.
Yeah, Nicaea. Like I think there's a lot of jerks in religious history that we don't really think about that much. King James especially, because he helped trigger the witch hunts in Europe and then later in America. But what I was going to say though is that one thing that is important to consider when we're thinking about like the Judaic history in regards to kind of how Christians today like have this. And I'm sorry to any Christians out there who like think I'm being unfair, but please bear with me and understand that this is for informational purposes and it's not for to take pot shots at anybody. But I do think it's true as somebody who was raised Christian that it's a lot like, oh yeah, we're the top, we're the number one, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best. But all of that comes from the fact one simple thing that they did, one simple thing that the Catholic Church did, and that was making Jesus blonde hair, blue eyed, and white Catholic Jesus.
Yeah,
and
that was the French portrayal, I believe. The French made him a little bit buff on the cross. I was watching an art history thing once.
That picture is just ridiculous.
and
I know what you're
was-
talking about. It's redonkulous, dude.
Yeah.
Swallow's
Yeah.
the goal. Size the prize.
Oh my gosh.
He could just like that. Jesus seriously could just like flex his like his back pecs and just like break the cross. You know what I mean? Like just rage out.
Not
Oh
today.
my gosh, that's a couple animations on YouTube. I promise you, I've seen a couple of them.
I had never have. That was original.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing more realistic renditions of Jesus, where he was like 5'6", really curly hair,
Yeah.
probably a little bit pudgy. Someone who that's the thing. Christians forget that Jesus was not someone who wanted to like be adored upon and think, whoa, he's so hot. He was very humble. So whether you believe he's the Messiah or a prophet, he was never this buff Jesus coming to show you the Whey, Whey. He was here to be humble. He made himself, if you believe the Christianity, he made himself a servant, basically. So he would have been short. He definitely was not white. He was definitely olive-skinned. He was definitely Jewish. So a lot of people forget that.
And I honestly think that this entire redo of this podcast was worth it just for that one point. Like
Agreed.
like honestly, like delineating Jesus Christ's lineage. I think it's something that like honestly is not gone into enough. It's not recognized enough that Jesus was Jewish, that Christianity was Judaism, just an offshoot, and not even really necessarily a willing
off as a
one.
cult.
It kind of was, wasn't it? But and I mean, I don't know. I gotta have appreciation and love for the history, of the Jewish people and kind of everything they've been through. So
I think
Yeah. We've had it rough.
that's my favorite thing. I think that's most of the traditions. Like every time you see a Jewish holiday, it's mostly about the preservation of Jewish heritage and life. The story of Hanukkah,
Yes.
the Maccabees being trapped and how
Yes.
they persevered through the night. Like you're saying, Passover, how they're trusting God and they were enslaved all these years, being pursued. Finally getting out of that. So
Yes.
they have the Jewish and the history of the Israelites is very cyclical. They're one moment they're on top, the next they're down at the bottom, then they're at the top, and they're at the bottom. So I think that I have a great appreciation for Jewish history. Right now, I think they're kind of on the up after 1948, or after World War II, when they got Israel back. So I think right now they're at the top. I hope we don't see a fall again. But like I was telling you, and you told me last time we did this, Pam. I watched a movie called Fiddler on the Roof. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. It's a fantastic musical.
It's so good.
I didn't realize that the fiddler, after watching it now that I'm older, like, the fiddler represents tradition. So he carries the fiddler with him everywhere he goes. And that's the story of Judaism that I like the most, is they always carry tradition with them. It's always passed down.
It is really good. It is really great. And you got to consider, I mean, Pam, think about it for a second. I mean, I'm sure you think about this all the time, but guys, just like get with me for a second. Think about this. We're talking about like 4,000 years. We're talking about like 4,000 years, 3,500, 4,000, something like that. Like, we're talking about a long, long time to pass tradition like that. You know what I mean? Like, to keep that and to keep it going and to keep the reasons for it going. It just it
keep it out
just,
throughout,
it deserves
keep it
so
throughout
much
the
respect.
diaspora that kept happening too. The Jews kept getting spread out very thin. You know, that's why you get like Polish Jews and Russian Jews. I was watching another show, Downton Abbey. This one guy was like, yeah. He was like, no, don't tell them. He's like, don't tell them I'm Russian, please. She's like, don't you know who he is? He's Russian. And they were like, oh, he's one of those Jewish Russians. So the diaspora that happens throughout Jewish history, and you know, they're making these, I don't want to say pilgrimages back, but throughout, all being spread out. And at the end of spoiler alert for Fiddler on the Roof, you know, what happens is they have to spread out again, and you hear everyone being like,
They have to leave.
what are you going to do? They're like, I'll go to America, I'll go to Chicago, New York, we'll go to somewhere in Russia. So they take those traditions that they made, you know, all the friends and family they made there, they had to spread out, and it's really sad. It makes me cry at the end of that movie, because that was 1911, somewhere around there. It was the 1910s.
Yeah, it was before World War II.
And it was, Russia was in war with Japan, and that's the first time Japan won against a Western country, because Russia was far behind. They also had a civil war basically going on with socialists and communists. So the Jews just kind of got mixed up in that within the story of Fiddler on the Roof.
I've never seen Fiddler on the Roof.
Stop, Dev. You haven't?
It's a long movie. It's good. It's a good.
No,
to see
you gotta
it.
understand.
You
I don't
have
watch.
to.
I don't watch a lot of movies or TV, so I miss a lot of stuff that
It's
people.
a musical. It's a musical. It's not a movie. It's not TV. It's a musical. And
I
it's lovely.
also, no disrespect intended to the awesome people behind Fiddler on the Roof, or to my awesome Jewish friends, but I don't do musicals. And no, there's two things. There's two things, guys. I don't do musicals, and I don't do movies that make me cry. The last movie I watched that made me cry, the last movie, I didn't know that it was gonna make me cry, and I was furious with Tatiana, and that was Up. Okay,
No.
Oh my
Up
gosh.
hit me so hard,
no.
and
It
I'm just like
should.
sitting there, and I'm not crying, you're crying, you know, and like I can't, guys, I can't, especially.
I mean-
this is maybe by myself, okay, like by myself, you know.
Well, it's okay. So it starts out like really, really sweet, and it's a man with how many daughters does he have? It's a man with all
He has
daughters.
5 daughters. He has
Five
five
daughters. Poor
daughters.
guy. Bless him.
I could never.
I have one daughter, and I'm like, God bless him. Bless you and keep you. So it starts off very normal. Like he tells you the story of Anatevka, the little town that they're in. He tells you the dynamic that they have with the people who live there, the people who are not Jewish, and you know, it starts very innocent, and then it kind of, you know, you start seeing things that just kind of devolve, and it's well worth it from a historical standpoint, because you know a lot of people who wrote musicals, who still even write musicals, are Jewish. So even musicals that you wouldn't even think about were written by Jewish people. So this is definitely one that is definitely a classic, and it showcases how resilient we are through the ages. You know, one of the last lines in the movie is, well, wouldn't this be a good time for the Messiah to show up? And he asks the rabbi, like, what, you know, why is he not here? And the rabbi just quietly, you can see he has so much love for this man who asks. He says, we'll wait for him somewhere else. You know, and it's like, it's just kind of like the story of our people. We keep waiting and waiting, and we just have so much faith in God, and it's just, it's beautiful.
I saw like an interview with Benjamin Netanyahu once a couple years ago.
That
I think it's
guy.
the eastern gate was blocked up, and he's like, one day the Messiah is going to come and he's going to burst that gate wide open. So even they're still waiting right now.
Yep.
It's really that sounds really cool. I might have to watch it before the next time we get together, because obviously I want to go into it knowing what's going on. I want to be one of the cool kids rocking the fiddler on the roof. I just I don't know. It's just I just musicals, man. Musicals.
How about this? You can come visit me. I'll make you some matzo ball soup. I'll make you some latkes. And then we can watch Fiddler, and then I'll geek out at all the Jewish stuff, and then we'll both cry. It'll be great. Bring
that
coffee.
sounds
It'll
both
be
of that sounds amazing, except for the problem of the crying part. I'll be in there like my eyes will be ready to explode out of my head, because I don't want to cry in front of people. I don't know why that is. I just don't like crying in front of people. I just can't stand it.
It's okay. I've got Puffs Plus lotion. It's fine.
Okay, all right.
Oh man, I need those. Since we did the last episode, or we tried to, I've been watching. Okay, this is gonna make me cry now. I've been watching cursing. A crap ton. I'll just say crap. That's a mild curse word. I've been watching so much about World War II. I watched Band of Brothers.
So good.
I watched Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And then I was telling Devin, and I told you guys last time, in Savannah there's a big Jewish population.
Yeah, of course.
Man, after seeing that, I'm like, I don't know, I'm about to start crying. Anytime that I see anything about the Holocaust, I get like the shaky cries. You can ask Sarah. She's like, "Oh my gosh, are you gonna be okay?" And I'm like, "Yep."
And I mean, it should affect you like that. If you're, a good person with a heart, it should affect you. I live right outside DC, and I always, always offer any of my friends or anybody who wants to go to the Holocaust Museum. It's like, I will go with you. We'll wash our hands. We'll sanitize. I will hold your hand, and we'll go through it, and we'll cry together, because it's something that I feel everyone needs to do at some point. You don't have to glorify it, but you have to look at it and say that this is something that did happen, and we can't let it happen again to any people. Doesn't matter if it's us, people we don't like. It doesn't matter. That nobody deserves what we went through, and other people as well.
Yeah, I don't remember if I said this last time, but Sarah went to Germany, and they have a massive Holocaust memorial there. It's a memorial garden. And the ground is all uneven, and it's it's got all the names of everyone there. It was a concentration camp at one point, and the ground is all uneven, and it's to mimic the dark tunnels that Jews had to go through on their way to whatever destination that the Nazis had for them. And I don't know if I can handle that one.
It's hard.
But she was telling me it was a fantastic experience, and actually, Germany actually hates Nazis. They don't,
they're
not to count out, not to shout out a certain whatever, but they don't glorify the past.
Right.
They have they were like, since the Americans keep asking, this is where he died.
Right.
They don't even have a thing about. They're like, they have a plaque that showed the bunker that he was in, but they're like, they don't have anything about the guy.
Yeah.
Maybe only in museums. Because they don't do revisionist history like a certain other one that I love. I love another country that does revisionist history. They're like, we didn't do that. What we did to China, we didn't do that.
Did I did I tell you guys about when I was at the museum and kind of?
You told me you got some behind the scenes pictures of stuff that they don't
Pam,
really put out for people.
Yeah, no. So I'll go through that real quickly, because I lived in Germany, but I was too young to see any of the Holocaust memorials or anything. So
right.
I was just a kid, Although I think that would have been the best time to do it, but my parents if they did, they might have. I don't want my parents to listen to this and think that I'm doing my own revisionist history. I just don't remember anything like that.
Right.
But what happened was I worked at the National Infantry Museum out of Columbus, Georgia, and the So I don't know if you guys know how museums work, but I mean, I'm sure you do. That sounded like so stupid. I'm not sure
I mean,
if
you know more than I do.
I don't know if you'll know that most of the collection is actually kept in archives, and only certain stuff is brought up for the public to
Yes.
look at.
I did know that.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's normally where I get like YouTube channels where they do this is what we have in the actual stock.
yeah, so that's kind of just a thing that's museums do, and because we work there, it might be surprising, but we weren't allowed into the archives, and it just the normal people who work there. I mean, I helped maintain exhibits all day, but couldn't touch any of the stuff in them. So just because of there's like a whole process you have to go through with the gloves and
Right.
all that good stuff. So there's a lot to it. But one day they actually invited us, the staff, to go tour the archives. And so I'm stoked, right? Because I love military history. I think it's very interesting. I'm from a military family. My dad, is a highly decorated ex-soldier from the infantry, and it's just really cool. And so what ends up happening is this woman, she had a flair, dude. She had like a flair for the dramatic. Because here's what
God.
happens. She's like, hey, look, check this out. This is a photo album from an engineer in World War II. Okay, for those of you, just for everybody who's listening, an engineer is they're the people who go in, they either destroy or build stuff. They're like kind of that's what they do. So, yeah. So engineers are awesome. Sappers, what up, all my sappers? Anyway, so what happens though is she pulls out this photo album, and it's all black and white photos, and it's all tiny photos because I mean this is like the 1940s, So it's all like this like little stuff, and it's just pictures of like the countryside, and it's like cool, it's interesting, it's a different time, it's neat, and then we get to the real stuff and the real purpose of us looking at it, and it was a concentration camp, and that was bad enough. And then there's like a bunch of like Jewish people like huddled and like all that good stuff, and that's not that's already like it's like already this is terrible, like this is not cool. And but the craziest image, which hasn't been released to the public, was we hear about them all the time, but you very rarely see them, mass graves. Mass graves just full of innocent people who had done nothing to anybody, just piled as far as the frame could capture, and it wrecked me. I'm not gonna lie, it wrecked
Yeah.
me.
I mean, it should.
Nobody deserved that. Anyway, you were
No.
gonna say something, Pam?
So if you actually, I've been to two different Holocaust museums, the one in DC and the one in Jerusalem. And both are vastly different, both kind of like focus on different things. But one of the things that they have in Yad Vashem in Jerusalem is the very last room you go to before the quiet room where they just, okay, so what they do is they have the circular room, okay? And in the center of the room, and you can look up pictures on Google, it's actually really beautiful, is a well. And you can see if you look up that there are photos. And then if you look down, it's just a well. And this is supposed to be a grave, like for those who never were buried, for those who were burned. And if you look along the walls outside, you see binders. And you see these are the accounts, all that we know about these victims. And they weren't just Jewish people. They were people who were mentally ill. They were Polish people. They were...
Yeah. The non-Aryans.
Exactly. People just didn't fit that mold. So this is what we know of these people. And then you see this section where there's nothing. Because out of 6.3 million people, there are still some of those people's stories that we just don't know. And that's the last thing they tell you is that please, 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 if you have relatives, if you know someone who has not spoken about these atrocities, please encourage them to speak. We need to know about these people. They deserve to have their stories known. And, it is hard. And then you go into the last room, which is a totally quiet room. It's dark. And you see like what looks like starlight. And then you hear a voice. And the voice tells you a name and the age of which that child that person passed, and it's all children. It is all children. It's everyone. It's just they're kids. And, it hits you that, yes, they tried to kill us, but they murdered children, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And it's absolutely atrocious. And that is something that I will never, ever forget. It's just absolutely awful. So I can't even imagine, Dev, seeing what you did. They have photos in these museums. They have, of course, in DC, one of the last rooms you go to is just, they have shoes.
Yeah.
They just have shoes
I've heard about
piled
that.
up. And it's like a mountain. It's literally a mountain of shoes. And you just see, and you think, these belong to people who they murdered,
It was messed up
said.
too. Like, they took the jewelry from
sure.
people, like wedding rings and stuff. And
I
just,
know!
it's so
awful.
nasty. Like,
And wasn't it Band of Brothers where they go to the camp and then you see they're in the town next door and they're like, you couldn't hear the screaming?
Yeah.
And it's like, where do you think they got all these lavish things from? Who do you think they stole these from? Who do you think they went to their homes and took the artwork, the jewelry, the candlesticks, and melted it down for money? It's like, oh, it makes me so mad.
the thing that is disgusting about it is not only that, it happened, it was an atrocity. It's like, it's an atrocity of such a magnitude that, like, to this day, as was mentioned earlier, like Germany's utter rejection of that ideology, it's like the thing is that people to this day, because they don't maybe have the advantage of going to the Holocaust museums or
Right.
to the back archives of another museum, but the people who deny it,
I can't
where
even
where
with
else
that.
did 6.3 or whatever million people go? And it's like, you've got to be in such a place of privilege to be able to just like completely deny a mass genocide of people. And that's any people. And genocides,
Right.
genocides happen. They don't just happen in Europe or any, they
Yeah, look at
happen.
Darfur.
But yeah, that's another one. Darfur is another one. There's genocides that happen in Iraq. There's
Absolutely
still
terrible.
violence against Jewish people in the Middle East, as well as
What
Christians in
about
the Middle
China?
East.
The
It's,
Muslim population in China.
I'm sorry,
Have you heard about the Muslim population in China?
I haven't.
Oh, I'm gonna send you some links, guys. That's bad too. It's Vice actually did kind of a if you guys have HBO, if you have Vice, go into it and look. I don't remember how to say the people's name, but it's literally this population within China that is not the Han Chinese, and they are trying to make these people disappear. They will remove their children and put them in like re-education camps, and these people, they disappear. They either end up in labor camps or they end up dead, and no one talks about it. It's in one specific province, and I can't remember because we watched it maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It was when we just moved to Maryland. This was coming out, and it was absolutely it's disgusting. It is disgusting. You can't just erase a people. I don't care who you are. You can't erase a people.
And I don't even like, the worst part about the whole situation is that like, I don't even understand, like, and this is something we talked about on the last one too. And I mean, I still feel like, even though I think that you gave good information on it, I still don't feel like it makes sense to me why anybody would even want to remove, like, especially like Jewish people who are just too ahead, just sweet and nice and intelligent and just cool people. And
Let's be honest, there's bad people everywhere. Like, we are not all, good people.
I mean, the ones I've met, like, but then again,
which is fair.
Then again, on the other hand, like, a lot of times, one cool thing about Judaism is, we mentioned it earlier in the episodes, that there's not a lot of proselytization. So a lot of times, I'm sure I've known a lot of people that were of the Jewish faith that I did not know that fact. That's awesome. I think that a lot of times, like, it's better to keep your faith, close, but sometimes I wish Christians would follow that example themselves, and other people, okay, like, not just them. Okay, I mean, I I don't. It's not meant to be trash talking of anybody. I'm just saying, like, I think
Right.
all of us need to, But anyway, point being is, it just makes no sense to me. It never has. Anti-Semitism is just freaking absolutely ridiculous to me.
Oh, it's
And
stupid. It's so stupid.
It is. It's just it's stupid. Like any situation where you're trying to like just take out like so many people like for no reason other than like something like it's something external. You know what I mean? Like killing. Like I don't know. It's it might be better to actually explore some of these like themes in the next episode because it is getting to be a long episode.
Yes.
But
Oh, I didn't even realize. I'm just
It's
standing here.
been about an hour, right?
we're at about an hour 5.
Yeah, hour and
Oh,
5.
okay. Wow.
So, but
Time flies when you're having fun.
yeah, it does. It's this has been a great one. It's been so informative. Yeah, let's Pam, are you willing to do a sequel with us?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, we're gonna get you on for a sequel. And before Nick does his thing, because Nick is the host, guys. He
I talked more than I did last time, I think.
That's true. The last time you just kind of faded in the background, made me carry the whole dang thing with Pam. I'm kidding. I'm joking. I do want to highlight that Pam is not only a wonderful human, but also a Twitch streamer, as I mentioned in the beginning. Pam, can you just shout out some links and some places where people can find you and support you?
Why, absolutely. Thank you so much for even mentioning that. So I am on Twitch at twitch.tv/thegreatpamtaro. You can also find me on Twitter. I am at thegreatpamtar1. And I also actually have a shop. And what I do is I sell, and I actually stream this sometimes as well. So what I do is I paint bottles, wine bottles, whiskey bottles, and basically any bottle I can get my hands on that has been used, and I paint them into just upcycled works of art. And so I actually have a shop on Etsy called Drunken Panda Crafts, and it's a lot of fun, and I really like it. And basically it goes back into buying more paint. Like I don't
That makes
actually make
sense.
money off of it. I just buy more paint with it. But yeah, I am a variety streamer. I paint, I play games, and I just have a lot of fun. So join me if you would like.
And you should, because Pam's awesome.
All right.
All right, Nick, you want to do your thing?
It's your turn. It's your turn, Devin. You got to shout out all of your links.
Oh, yeah, sure. I wasn't expecting that. All right. Cool. Yeah. So, I am obviously flustered at the moment. If you want to find more information about me and what I do, I own a clothing shop called Beetle Milk. So you can just go to www.beetlemilk.com. And you can get more information on that. I also have my own podcast called Beetlecast. It is it's great and wonderful.
Yes, it is.
But
It is.
make sure y'all understand that it's not as family friendly as
No, it's
Lorecast. So that's a part of it. But so Beetlecast is a thing, and yeah, so that's really all I have for y'all. I mean, other than my involvement with Lorecast and all that good stuff. So BeetleMilk.com and Beetlecast, and also I got to drop in actually a shout out to my co-host Zach, Ghostbody, because he's
One of my
awesome.
personal friends. I love him so much.
Zach is the best, and so his stream is twitch.tv/Ghostbody. Make sure to go check him out. But yeah, thanks for that opportunity to plug myself, Nick. I appreciate that, man.
Absolutely. I don't believe in talent for free. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Lorecast Religion, the first one in Judaism. This time we'll have it edited. I'll have it edited and out soon after airing or recording. So that's going to be useless to you in the future who are listening. Thank you for listening. We will do a sequel, it sounds like. At the time of this recording, this is only the first one. We had finished all of Christianity. So anything that we get within later religions, if we get to them, it's going to be based off this foundation. And if you listen to it in out of order, it's going to sound a little bit different. But thank you so much for listening. The intro theme was done by the amazing Devin here. It's been in all of the Lorecast after the year like late 2020. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Lorecast. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.